Hey guys, I want to give you I want to give you a framework. I want to give you a way of thinking about the world and thinking about your life and thinking about your progress. And it is really, really simply to to remember that your longevity needs to trump your ego. And this doesn't mean that I want you to live a uber safe, a hyper safe life that you don't take any risks and you don't push. Um, because that doesn't work. That's boring. We lose our life's purpose that way. If we're skiers, then it means that we're not skiing new lines. We're not taking chances. But we've got to remember that we should be around on this planet for quite a while, right? That's certainly my goal. And if we are training, especially when we're at the gym, if we are taking risks with our training, we've got to realize that at some point those risks are not likely to pay off. Um, and again, it doesn't mean we don't train hard, but it does mean that we have to train smart. And so when I say that I want you to have a mindset where your longevity trumps your ego, what I mean is that when you are in a moment of making a decision and you are going for something or you're deciding whether to go for something or not, whether that is to be the first person through on a slope that's prone to avalanches, or the first person down a really steep line that you haven't skied before, or going for one more rep of a lift, or going for one more run at the end of the day when you're tired. You've got to weigh at any given moment. It is your job as a human to weigh the cost and the benefit. If that goes well, what comes out of it? If it doesn't go well, how badly does it go? And it's a game of making calculated risks. And I have this bias, which is that if I can't calculate the risk, or if the reward isn't so good that I'm going to be incredibly excited about it, I'm probably going to back off. And it doesn't mean I back off from doing fun stuff. It doesn't mean I back off from doing hard stuff. It's actually quite the opposite. When I take on hard stuff, fun stuff, extreme stuff, doing it, well, I've already stacked the odds in my favor. We can think of this in terms of just strength training for a second. My left shoulder and arm has been weak for a long time. A cycling injury 10 years ago that I was really slack on recovering from and doing the strength work to get back from, because I wasn't doing much upper body work. I didn't care. I was a runner and a cyclist. Like, as long as it didn't hurt, it didn't matter. Years later, kind of changed my tune on that. And I now care more about it because I really need it to be strong for mountain biking, especially. And one of the exercises I use is a bench press. I do a bench press, pretty common thing. And on every set of bench, I push towards failure. I try to avoid failure. I think once in the last year have I needed a spotter to actually help me get a bar back up. But I've been getting consistently stronger. So I'm pushing a threshold, but I'm pushing a threshold that is actually out here. If this is the limit, if this is where I'm going to fail, I'm always moving here, at least within strength training, and within a lot of skiing as well, within a lot of mountain biking as well. Because that thing is I don't want to fail, but I always am pushing my abilities so that I'm driving that failure point forward. And I do that because I inherently care about being able to do this stuff for a really long time. I want to be ripping lines with my kids and my grandkids 40 years from now on a mountain bike, on skis, whatever. I want that more than I want any individual piece of glory now. And this is where ego comes in. It is the ego that says, let's do one more. Let's go for that next rep. Let's go to that steeper line. Let's go take that. Let's go ski across the Avi prone terrain, the avalanche risk terrain. And can you do it and get away with it? Sure. Probably for a while, and maybe you get away with it 10 times, but that 11th time, the cost can be really, really high. And what I've decided for me is that cost is not worth it. And everyone's going to have their own limit, right? Some people are going to be really, really comfortable having a knife's edge where your threshold and your comfort or what you're willing to do are really, really close together. For me, as I've gotten a little bit older, those have gotten a little bit wider. And so I encourage you to think about this for yourself. What's that gap? how much wiggle room do you want to have? And if you are, if you have a history of being accident prone, I'll tell you this, you're probably a little bit too like risk happy, right? You're probably too little risk accepting. And if you have never gotten hurt and you're not pushing, you're not seeing gains, you're not seeing performance improvements, then your gap is probably too big, right? And I believe that the right size gap is somewhere in here. This, we're probably not pushing hard enough. This, where we're getting hurt regularly, we might be pushing too hard. We have to find that middle ground. And for me, that middle ground is, again, the definition of where I am balancing my drive to do things with my desire to be able to do them for a really long time, and my ego stays out of it. That is so incredibly important. It is about keeping the ego out of that decision-making process. If you do the thing because it's going to make you happy, but the cost is potentially really high, you've got to consider that. You've got to weigh that out. If your goal is to improve on performance, then you need to make the decisions to do the things that are going to improve your performance, which are not always the things that are going to make you feel good or make you really happy. If you're trying to improve your bench press and you go for one more rep and you tweak your shoulder, I've been there, and then you don't get to bench for 2 weeks, you're going to lose some strength over those 2 weeks. That costs you time. It costs you performance. You were too close. You would have been better with a slightly bigger gap. And again, it's not a huge gap. It is not permission to not do work, and it's not permission to not do hard work, but it is to be smart about doing that hard work. So that's it, guys. Chat with questions. Let me know what you think. Don't let your ego trump concerns of longevity. That's where, if you're competing, if you're making money off your thing, it's a little bit different. But if it is you doing it for you, check the ego at the door, check the ego in the car, and then go have a good day and rip some good lines, and be stoked about the time outside, be stoked about the friends, be stoked about the performance. But don't let yourself get into the place where you're making dumb decisions just because you've got something to prove, because that's where it goes wrong. See ya.